Trying to find the right room. And I'm wondering, since there's obviously going to be so few of us, maybe we should gather towards the front of the room so we can actually have a conversation and not be too spread apart. Okay, I guess we should get started. So I'm Allison Parker again, and I direct the U.S. program at Human Rights Watch. And my role in this session is just to help moderate a conversation amongst all of us on best practices in responding to children in migration. I was asked, I know some of the other sessions, there were some videos that were gathered from the field, and I was asked by the forum to provide a video from my organization. So I've done that. So I thought what I'd do is we'll just start out by watching a very short video from Human Rights Watch. This video is actually from 2010, which in and of itself I find pretty fascinating because, as you'll see, it addresses the reception in Greece of asylum seekers and migrants. And unfortunately, I don't need to preface it much more than to say very little has changed from what you're about to see. So if our colleagues in the back can play the video now.
These people are desperate. They're leaving their villages, their families, their traditions, everything. And then they arrive into this place and they're not welcome.
Last in Greece in mid-July, days after they destroyed this informal settlement in Patras. That was almost a kickoff point of a whole series of evictions that took place in the weeks after that.
This is a camp that housed several hundred undocumented migrants, mostly from Afghanistan, and mostly minors. When we got there, all we found were some burned trees, scattered clothes and shoes. And then we decided we would go look for the people that lived there.
It was very worrying because they lived out in the open.
This is one of the first kids that we found. He was sleeping inside a little baby crib, trying to at least be comfortable during the night.
My name is Hamid. I'm from Ghazni province in Afghanistan. We are living like animals inside jungle. Now, I want to go back to Afghanistan, but I don't have any money. In this situation, I lose myself.
Greece is the first EU country on the way to Europe when you come from Africa, Middle East and South Asian countries such as Pakistan or Afghanistan. EU legislation says that any migrant who enters the EU has to make an asylum application in the first country that person entered. The chances of receiving asylum in Greece is close to zero.
There's only this one night during the week where migrants from all over the world are allowed to apply for asylum in Athens. Simone and I spent the whole night with thousands of people. A lot of them came with blankets, most of them lining up through the night, sleeping on the floor. I saw only 5 or 6 people taken into that office, and some of them actually told us that they've been coming here for months. We went to Lesbos Island. We saw a group of migrants that had been picked up on a makeshift boat. They were mostly Afghans, a few Iraqis, some Somalis.
We are Somalian people. We have a lot of problems in our country. They're fighting every day. And so every day people have to die. Yeah, that's why we are here.
The Greek government doesn't keep any statistics of how many unaccompanied children come into Greece, and police officials are very bad at identifying them. And once a child comes into Greece without the required papers, that child is detained. Once they get out of detention centers, the Greek police gives the child a deportation order that says you have to leave the country within 30 days. And then the child is told to disappear.
They're caught in this limbo where they don't have any work, they don't have any money, they cannot pay for a ticket to leave the country. They don't even know how to get help.
They're treated exactly the same way as adults are treated, but they are, of course, way more vulnerable. They're definitely at risk of being exploited, of falling into the hands of trafficking networks.
They're kids that at their age already have experienced stuff that most of us will never experience.
Despite ongoing criticism by international human rights bodies, NGOs, and to some extent also the EU, Greece is not willing to put its house in order. And at this stage, we need some strong signals from the EU, because the EU has the power to take Greece to court and to hold Greece accountable.
We can actually stop the video here. I think we'd all appreciate a time to talk. Great, thank you. So that's just a brief introduction to a situation that I think you probably all are pretty familiar with. My role here, again, is just to moderate a conversation amongst us, and the goal of this conversation is to come up with some of the best practices that we have all seen in our work in responding to child migrants. There will be a report back after the session, so I have to ask if there's anybody here who'd be willing to sort of take some notes and report back when we come back together. Could I have a volunteer to do that? Please, someone, because I think everyone's tired of hearing me talk. Thank you. So, just to kick off the conversation, I thought I would offer 3 framing questions. And you don't have to answer these questions when you speak, but just to sort of get the juices flowing, I thought I would ask the following questions of all of you. The first one is, what are the best practices in assuring cross-sectoral integration of programs? Do any of us have lessons learned or best practices to share in achieving that goal? It's clearly something we've heard from many practitioners today, but the question is, how do we do it? Another question I'd like to pose to you, and then I'm going to open it up for conversation, is how do we involve migrants themselves in the programs that they are engaged with? And as a part of that, how do we focus on their strengths? So you don't have to respond to any of those questions, but I thought they might help to frame the discussion. Does anybody want to lead off with an example of best practices in response to migrants? Yes, in the front.
Big amount of immigrants coming from Haiti, Bolivia, Peru, person. But that was very complex in terms of we had to put an office, we had to create norms and to supervise a lot because, well, the entry point in the country is in the borders, always is the same everywhere. Then we are learning. I am here because we are learning. Chile is the last country in the world. Nobody wants to go there, in general. And then, but I am working also in the university, and we are working in having meetings with the immigrants of different parts of the Latin America. In the place where the university is set, there are a lot of Haitians. No, Haitiano. Ah, okay, from Haiti. They speak French. They look different because Bolivia and Peru we are all similar. But from Haiti is different language, different color, different. In general, all the culture is very different. But they are very, very interested in to participate. They are working with us in the university. They are every day more empowerment in terms of how we can live, where we want to work, which are our competence. One doctor from Haiti was elected the best doctor in some city. That was very important for immigrants because the people recognize the difference. More nice person, dedicated, whatever. But we are learning because I think that this is growing and growing. It's something that maybe for us is new now, but I think that it's going to be. We have now around 300,000 persons immigrant. In my country is small. We are only 17 million inhabitants. Then we are in this problem. I learned a lot in this discussion this afternoon, but I think that it's necessary, first of all, to look in different periods of the cycle of life, which are the needs, because it's not the same needs for everybody. The older people, the pregnant women, the children in the early years of life, and how to go and how to go with the cultural pertinence, because our culture is different, and there is require a lot of adaptation of the health system, the educational system. Is need to teach or to capacitate the teachers, the nurses, because it's a new way of relationship. And I think that it's a good experience when in 10 days we were capable to implement the system to give right to health and education for immigrants.
Thank you very much. It's a very rich experience you've shared. I've taken from it this theme of registration, the need to address different stages of life, and the important example you shared of the Haitians and the leadership that they are showing for their own community, even in a situation where they are so different from Chilean society. I think there was a comment back here. Yes, Joan?
I'm wondering what can come out of the forum that could put forward some ideas. I mean, I think Jan's summary of what's needed with regards to the workforce and other elements that he went over could be kind of part of a record. Because what I'm hoping for is that somebody should come out of this, that would be a message, not that we can make recommendations. I realize that.
Jan, do you want to respond to that? Or am I putting you on the spot too much? See, that's me as a lawyer trying to push the envelope. Maybe I should open it up for other comments. Yes?
I was going to say that with the minors, with the young people, I have seen that connecting them to advocacy groups and training them as peer leaders to tell their stories and to help in whichever way, so like that they feel empowered. They also get a social network because they're very disconnected, especially if they came on their own, is important. And also, like connecting them to health, and in a developmentally appropriate way where they can assess or learn about their journey through the migration or immigration process, because often they are traumatized. They suffer all type of traumas, as you said before, during and after. And if those things are identified, they can be connected to appropriate services that are very specific to the trauma and start them healed. And then also connecting them to other systems like schools, because, especially the young people need to feel very connected so that they're not so isolated and getting depressed and suicidal and that type of thing. So really almost creating a system for them now in this new environment and helping them learn. So I have found that very empowering, and often they can be paid like a stipend during the training, and as they do the work with these organizations.
So just for clarification, this is a program that you are implementing already in your work, or?
I work with youth in New York, in the city, all type. I work with 10,000, and some of them are migrants, and unaccompanied migrants. And we have training not just specifically for those kids, but we have worked with them in terms of training them to become leaders and peer leaders and talk about specific issues and connect them, and youth organizing in different, so I think this could be done, and we have done that. We see those kids in some of the trauma, we do that work. We found many of them have been raped and all type of things. So then we work with them about on that trauma and helping them. And we have also legal services in the center, so we help them with whatever they need in terms of legal support. So just really making sure that these young people don't be so by themselves, isolated. How do we create a safe environment or a place where they feel connected? I think it's important.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was mentioned earlier, the Head Start program for migrant youth in the U.S. I think another recent example, it's along the lines of what you're talking about. Many of you may have heard about the Dreamer movement in the United States.
I was thinking about that also specifically.
And so this was a movement of undocumented youth inside the United States who really have organized themselves. And it's interesting also to think about how they have used social media very effectively in their organizing. Other thoughts about best practices?
It's always delightful to have lawyers in the room. And I wonder why it is, or if it's possible, to just sue the authorities on behalf of the children. Because, I wonder if somebody took some character from a case, the kickstart stuff. Children are curious. My understanding that I come from the UK is that children don't really have legal, they're not a legal entity, they can't focus on themselves, they can't hire a lawyer. But is there, has everyone thought of it? Because as you look at it, there's clear rules, and it just looks to me like it's a total breach of human rights. And it just seems like there is boundaries which we could quantify. And I just don't know if anyone's actually just got the gumption to take some kind of big case.
I love that idea. And I will say that I mentioned in my presentation on the U.S. that we have had some success in curtailing the duration of family detention, the duration in which very young infants, toddlers, and their mothers are held in detention. And the success that we've had is because of litigation, because we helped with a lawsuit that was brought and sort of piggybacked on a class action. I won't get into the details, but that is the main reason we've seen any reform in the U.S. is litigation. But I don't know how well that translates in all other countries. Other thoughts about best practices?
In my country, the governmental organization is responsible for Belgium, for health with young children and with pregnant mothers. They based themselves on the Convention for the Right of the Child to say that they have to help even children from parents who are completely illegal. So, because they are saying that the Convention of the Rights of the Child is above the national law, and now since more than 10 years they are in the medical consultation offices. They are helping the mothers which are completely illegal in Belgium, and on both sides, because we have the French speaking and the Dutch speaking on both sides.
It's a great example. I can just speak as an American. I wish we were party to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and wish that if we were, our courts would consider it above our national law, like you're describing in Denmark.
I was going to ask you, do you know what can be done to help? I think the U.S. is the only country at this point because Somalia signed on. So what can be done? What will it take?
You know, Human Rights Watch obviously has been involved in the effort to see the U.S. ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and so many other groups in the U.S. have been working very hard on seeing it happen. Unfortunately, there has been a problem with ratification of a treaty in the U.S. requires participation of the Senate, and there are major problems in the U.S. Congress at the moment in really getting anything done. But this treaty in particular has been very controversial in the U.S., both because the U.S. has a very, sometimes looks skeptically at international treaties across the board, but also because the Convention on the Rights of the Child has very clear provisions relating to access to reproductive health, and also, as we heard, the right of a child to be heard if he or she wishes. And so there are some, I will say, more conservative parts of U.S. political life that feel that those provisions are inappropriate for the U.S. Does anybody have thoughts about the kind of cross-sectoral point, you know, sort of how to integrate legal, education, health, social protection? Yeah.
I just wonder whether, you know, even before you can move with some of the activities, if you can't get the governments to recognize the issue as a problem, that it's going to be difficult to move forward. And I guess a block to their recognizing it as a problem is, what does that entail to them and their population? Do they then, you know, and I'm not sure they know. Does that mean they take in more migrants? Does that mean a whole series of events take place and they don't even know where the scale of the problem in terms of where is it leading to? The last thing governments want to do is open the door to something where they don't know where it's going. So, I mean, I don't have any solution, but I think, you know, probably all that can be done at the moment is just to decide to do something on an NGO basis or something to help mitigate. Perhaps working with immigrant groups already within the country. So, you know, one thing that Canada's tried to do is to mobilize immigrant groups to work with their own country and maybe support some immigrant. So immigrant groups have sort of sponsored those sorts of things where migrants would come into existing communities might be a problem.
It's a good point. On your first point, which I think is very true, I noticed, and I'm ashamed to admit I can't remember whose presentation, but someone made the point, maybe it was you, Jan, that there needs to be an understanding that that the policies that benefit migrants can benefit us all. And I wonder if that might be some piece of the answer to the very perplexing problem you're posing about sort of lack of governmental will to address this problem. I mean, we see in the U.S. that attempts to marginalize or keep out of a legal status various migrant groups means that none of us are as safe as we could be, because criminal organizations prey on the undocumented living in the U.S. Migrants are unwilling to report crimes if they're victims of crimes. And you have, as I mentioned in my presentation, this problem of families with different statuses, where you have U.S. citizen kids who are very badly affected by the policies that are applied to their parents. So, but I think it's a broader lesson, is kind of this question of how the way we treat migrants does have an effect on all of us. Yes?
I think also the converse is true, in that, as you have raised, I think until governments or organizations take an integrated approach within their own countries to integrating healthcare and education and other social services, they're not going to extend that approach to immigrants or migrants if they can't apply it within their own population. So I think the first layer of challenge is thinking cross-sectorally sort of as the base, and then as you approach
that. There's something that is happening in New York City. This is not about migrants, but in New York City, everything is siloed: health, education, child protection, as we know. And the mayor of New York City right now put together a group to create a children's cabinet to try to work on those barriers, and so that there's communication, because right now, Administration for Children's Services that are responsible for protecting kids in the system are not talking, they cannot talk to education, they cannot, so they are trying to figure that out. So they just began this group to try to work among the different agencies, and then they're bringing people from different sectors to also help figure that out. So I mean, once that's in place, that may be helpful then for all type of children and youth. And they're going to go to actually 0 to 24. This, I think, the age group that is being proposed.
Was there another comment here?
Yeah. On one of the forum, there was a former Minister of Education, and he explained the point of view of a policymaker, which I found very interesting. That's why that was based on what I thought is that he introduced the education system, something gives you some criteria. If, for instance, if you speak another language at home, if you're coming from a lone parent family, all kind of things, and then the Ministry of Education is giving more money, and the money goes with the child, so that the schools are. It's interesting for schools to work with those children because they bring more money into the school. And you see that it has had a huge impact on the Belgian school system. Suddenly it was interesting to work with migrant children, and so. But then he explained, it was very interesting, he explained how you have to sell that to the people, to the middle class people, that you have to convince them that it's also important for their children, because they are together with the group, and if those children get support, then the level of the education in the school is high, and if you don't do it, then it's not good for the other children who are in the classroom. So, we learned a lot as researchers from him to say that you always have to think. I think it was the same what I liked this morning from Margarita, how she turned up the thing, so she didn't talk about Roma children as what they missed, but she said, well, the middle class children, but the more chances they got than the Roma children. I think so. In communication, it's important, especially now with all the Syrian refugees who are coming. It will be very difficult for policymakers to invest in them, because you see in a lot of European countries, people are very afraid and they vote for the people that are against it. And so it's very important to help policymakers to communicate about the issues.
I guess some of it is how you frame the question. It's not allowing the negativity to be the question.
Yeah.
Trying to frame it in a positive way.
And I think that this really can only be solved at the community level and understand the perspective of the communities where people are entering, because these are huge shifts for them. And I think we have to be sensitive to what the communities are going through at the same time there is this migration. I also think this, your second point about community and being sensitive across the region.
Other thoughts while Joan tries to think of her second point? I mean, I think it is, we're hearing in different iterations this idea of looking at migrants as a resource and really understanding the positive contributions they can make to community.
I mean, it's this notion in the U.S. National Black Child Development Institute, or whatever it's called, Black is not a risk factor. And it was a very powerful statement that would take us out of risk, always talking to us about risk as risk. And I think we have to start looking at the strength that the refugee crisis is bringing to the countries and the resources they bring.
Just to add to what John's saying, my experience is from 1975, well, I should we see international places, that's a different story. You know, that's really what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah, we have issues with undocumented people. We have the issue of child migration, as Alison mentioned. But at the same time, when you look at the U.S. experience, it is an experience that actually, as a country, can really look at it and say, how does the U.S. have benefits? Yeah, we have Vietnam Town, we have Thai Town, we have still a Polish Town, and out of that diversity, you know, we are still trying to keep one country. You know, so that for me, I see one side of the issue also.
Thank you. That's very needed infusion of hope, I think, to this conversation. Yes.
I've been thinking about what these issues that we're dealing with, and to me it comes down to two things. One is a humanitarian type of dialogue, and the second thing is empathy. And the concept of empathy and the consciousness of what's going on in the world is really what's required, and those people who are closer to being immigrants themselves perhaps have that empathy. Everyone in the United States, to a certain extent, except the Native Americans, are immigrants at one time or the other. It's just after each successive generation, people become less empathetic to the next wave. Europe is going through a very interesting situation right now because you have 1,000-year histories of peoples, and they have not had that same experience. I mean, throughout European history, there have been waves of divorce and other things. But at this point right now, it's unprecedented what's going on. Except, of course, the internal displacement, as we were talking about the Roma. So I think the concept of empathy and humanitarianism is really what underlies a lot of the thinking that we're dealing with.
It seems that putting together what you said and what has been said over here by Iskander, I think, to me, one of the things that I wrote down earlier today is the combination of data plus story. And I think that while continuing to highlight the data about how many people come as refugees, what the status is, but also combining that with personal stories. Because I think what often happens is people come as refugees, those who become successful push that story under. They don't want to talk about it. It's not something that's very well known because there's that pressure for assimilation and to hide the origins and or whence you came so that you can become more a part of the new society. And so I think continuing to put efforts into exposing the data and also highlighting personal stories, I think it helps build the empathy and you should go pieces, the numbers and the face.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. I think part of the challenge we have is when we are talking about immigration and immigrants, we tend to focus in a very intellectual way, trying to learn. I did the same thing today. The 91 that's why it's very important when I talk about the refugees and migrant issue, I see myself in the people I'm talking about. It's just very easy for me. And I don't care what nationality you are. For me, the principle of engagement is you have to see yourself in the people who try to help. And you have, when we talk about this, because refugees are coming in, you have to learn to see yourself. Yeah. It will be you. Yeah. If you can't see yourself so that people are trying to help, nothing works. Right? Yeah. So that's just what I'm saying.
Thank you. I think that's a very moving personal testimony. And I wonder, I mean, just elaborating on it a little bit, the notion of finding that empathy by seeing in a refugee one's own self. The other points that Joan and Iskender have made about the U.S. resettlement program, which is a completely different program from the issues that I was talking about earlier. I mean, in many ways, that is a wonderful example of the effort by the U.S. government and many actors in civil society to respond very appropriately to refugees. And so I also think that might be something we should try to share with other global actors around the world. And I know that Iskender's organization does that, but maybe we could do more to show, again, the contributions that refugees can make to societies, especially in this moment in Europe. It might be important to share that experience. Any other thoughts? I'm actually not clear on how much time we have for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we're in the room where everyone needs to come back.
Oh, great. Okay.
So let me go gather them.
Okay.
They're probably asking the same question. They're waiting for me.
But I noticed there are some of you who are here who haven't shared your thoughts, and I really, there's no expectation that you do so, but I want you to feel comfortable in doing that. If there's anything more that folks want to share about how we can respond to child migrants and child refugees, asylum seekers. Something I'll just share, maybe it will provoke thoughts in some of you, and it's, again, on the same theme of the strengths of people who do make the decision to move. I think, there's often, again, that perception, these people are fleeing economic deprivation, they're fleeing war, they're traumatized. But in my travels amongst refugees around the world, I think there's also that clear theme of resilience, of strength, of being, in some cases, the leaders of their societies, and human beings who have really tried to make the best of very difficult circumstances. So I think, that's something else that's important to remember.
I think the fact that you survived through the journey and all those things, it just make you stronger. So you tend to be much more able to cope and be able to adapt after all those experiences.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that being risk takers of their communities and societies that impeding the societies which they left from. So I think that the challenge is that they haven't lived in the world for years, spending a lot of time outside the world in East Africa, is seeing folks fleeing, but yet those are the same people that you really need to have is to help build up a society and have that leadership. When we talk about early childhood development, I think it's trying to find creative ways that you're building up economic opportunities in the communities so folks are not, if it's for economic reasons, seeking to come to the U.S. in this context in the first place. The splitting up the families, to me, I think that just the U.S. has got to figure that out. We can't solve that right now. But looking at the amount of the decrease in funding to Central and South America by the U.S. government, to me,
those are really important points about investing in the country of origin, addressing the root causes for some of this migration, especially for young children. Well, it looks like some of our colleagues are coming back into the room, so I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this discussion, and I look forward to the report back. Thank you.